Hello and welcome to the Jefferson Madrig's Fantasy Podcast, the pod on a mission to normalise 8-team leagues. I completely forgot the name of the podcast for a split second then. That was a good start. We are in week one. That's because I'm all excited. We're in week one preview mode. Finally, the season is here.
Finally here.
We are hours away. We're on a two-man pod. I am joined tonight / today / whatever time you're listening by my good friend and fantasy expert Ian Harrison. How are you, Ian?
Yeah, good. Good evening, good morning, whatever you want to call it. How was your holiday? Have a good time?
Yes, it was. How was the pod without me?
Smashed it, mate. Absolutely smashed it out of the park. Other than, getting a call on Brandon Ayuk horrendously wrong. Because we said he wasn't going to sign, and then he signed. As soon as we finished recording, he just signed, and we're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't still got to post
that. Was all that to me, that always felt like it was going that way. I just when he didn't go to the Patriots when they came in and went, here's a load of money, it just felt like it was like, I don't actually want to get traded. I want to stay where I am, but I want you to give me a little bit more money to stay where I am. So I don't know. Well, it obviously went badly for H because he's not here this week. So I don't know what you did to him.
No. It wasn't even his opinion, really. It was mine that got wrong, and I'll hold my hands up for that. Occasionally I do swing and miss, but he's obviously that annoyed with my shout from last week that he's just not bothered tonight.
Yeah, so two weeks on the trot. We are just going two-man. You are holding this thing together, but hopefully we'll get through it.
The spine of the podcast.
For any new listeners, as I know we will be getting them in, we have seen a few people coming in. The format of our podcast runs very simply in 4 quarters of 15 minutes. So it should be, we are firmly into quarter one. We should be bang on an hour roughly of your time, which is what we try to aim to do. In the first quarter tonight, we're going to talk about any news, anything we've seen, basically have a little bit of a preview of our own teams, which is, for me, it's the Colts for Ian, it's Bengals ahead of the season. Then we'll get into a bit more fantasy chat in the second quarter. We're going to make some bold predictions in the third quarter, and then we've got bringing back one of our favorite features from last year, Selection Nightmare, and we're going to talk about the primetime games of the weekend. So kicking us off, I mean, you've just mentioned Ayuk. I think that, and did I see some news today that the 49ers have finally agreed contract talks with their other holdout?
Oh, I've not seen it agreed, but he was in the building, wasn't he? Trent Williams.
Right.
He was in the building, so the rumours are that it's due, and it will be happening imminently. If it's not done by the time we finish this pod, like last week when they signed Ayuk, as I was saying, that Ayuk won't be signing.
Yeah. Well, we're recording
other San Fran news. Ricky Pearsall.
Oh, I know.
Ricky Pearsall shot through the chest, not in the chest, through the chest.
Well, out of hospital in what? Less than 24 hours? I was like,
in and out. I was like, come on.
That tells you everything you need to know about gun crime in America, doesn't it? It's like, the bullet's gone right through you. You'll be fine. Put plaster on it.
Apparently, the guy trying to rob him also got shot. There was a scuffle for the weapon, and they both ended up getting shot.
Did he get... Okay. I was going to speculate then about an NFL player. I'm not going to do that.
I don't know which way around that happened, but both of them, apparently, according to the news, they both took a bullet.
He's very lucky. It's gone right through him. He's all right.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 8 away from being 50 Cent, but he's still still pretty impressive.
Yeah, he's still young though. He's got time.
You might have talked about this last week. Well, I mean, the other bit of news I saw, obviously, Lamb finally got paid as well. CD Lamb finally got paid, which I'm sure delighted H.
Yeah, H didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
he absolutely does not want to talk about CD Lamb getting paid. So I'm at a point now where I'm worried about Ja'Marr Chase now, because we are now Tuesday. He didn't practice again the other day. He did turn up for the team photo shoot though, which was encouraging.
Well, I mean, that's another one. He doesn't want to go anywhere, does he? He just wants.
No, of course not. He just wants more. Well, he just wants the security, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Because in his third year, everyone says don't give rookies deals in the third year. He just wants that security because if he goes out next year and breaks his leg, he just wants a bit more guaranteed money, I'm guessing. Plus, we are going to be the highest paid receiver. I have no doubt of that. I think that's going to happen. If it's by a single dollar, we will probably we'll pay more than CeeDee Lamb. Maybe not as much as JJ.
But it's the same thing. It's the same thing as I was talking to a Cowboys fan this morning. It's the same thing with Lamb. Like if they'd have paid Lamb last year, it wouldn't have cost them as much as it's now cost them. So Chase has got money on his contract. They could guarantee that and then pay him 30 million a year, 32 million a year for the next 4 years after that or whatever, and kind of go, right, it's all locked in. And it might sound like a lot of money now, but in 2 years' time, or even in a year's time, you'll look at it and go, well, he's like the 7th or 8th best paid wide receiver. And then in 2 years' time, he'll be the 15th best paid wide receiver. And you'll look at it and go, well, what a deal we've got for him as as the salary cap keeps going up. And hopefully new players are coming into the league and you get some younger players on rookie deals and stuff. It's just pay him. Just get it done sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and that's the point I was going to make is about cap space. Cap space is predicted to go up around 20 million next year. Who knows when it's going to go up the year after? So pay him now and kick it down the road because that's paying Chase now. We can exercise his 5th-year option, and then this deal doesn't come into effect for another 2 years' time. Deal with it then. Just pay the man.
How is this affecting your thoughts on as the Bengals are your team? How's this affecting your thoughts on the season as we go into it with a little bit of a cloud over it?
I think after week 1, it could be a struggle. I mean, we've got the Patriots week 1, which should
got to win this week, haven't you?
You have to win that. But then we've got the Chiefs week 2. No, they've got the Ravens week 2.
Yeah.
So, if we need it sorted this week, really, get Chase some snaps over the weekend. If you've got in leagues, if you've got T. Higgins and Chase on the same team, right now I'll be starting T and sitting Chase, and then looking at swapping them over next week. In terms of the full season, I'm not that worried.
So we've got I'm flicking back to fantasy again, but we've got 1 draft left. So I don't know what you'd even call it, like our first ever league that we sell.
The original redraft league.
Oh, yeah, original redraft league going into its 9th year. And so we've got our draft tomorrow night. So we're recording Tuesday night. We've got the draft Wednesday night. Season kicks off Thursday night. And you are at 7, I think?
7.
So, I mean, is that I'm at 3. Chase probably doesn't come into my thoughts at 3, but if you're in that like the middle or even where you are at 7, if he falls to you at 7, does this affect the way you think about that? Like if you're putting him up against someone like a Justin Jefferson, who I would have taken Chase over Jefferson in every draft I've done if they were my choices. Whereas now, if you've got Jefferson and AJ Brown and people like that, is it making you think twice, or are you just taking Chase assuming that you're going to get it sorted in a couple of weeks anyway?
Oh no, I'm still taking Chase over Jefferson because he's still under contract. So the only way he doesn't play is if he sits out and loses money. And he's been at practice, although he's not trained, so he doesn't lose money. It's been a hold in rather than a hold out. So if he now says, right, I'm not playing, that's when he starts losing money. That's when we can start hitting with fines. He will suit up on Sunday. And maybe wouldn't start him in my fantasy team, depending on, if he's still not signed a contract by then.
That's a bold sit, that though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bold sit. But I'd wait until he signed his contract before I start putting him on my fantasy team. However, I would still take him in the first round. I still would take him above Jefferson.
Okay. Yeah. Like I say, I mean, it's not a problem for me because I'm at 3, but I really, in the leagues that I've got him, I'm a bit like, I think you just got to play him and hope for the best, unless you get news beforehand that he's not playing. But that feels a bit like he could, especially as you're playing the Patriots, like you could, I mean, teams tend to start slowly, and I think we get all excited about week 1, and then you get to the end of week 1 and go, oh, it wasn't as like powerhouse as I thought it was going to be because teams are still finding their way. but you could easily score 3 or 4 touchdowns. Burrow could easily throw 3 or 4 touchdowns, and if he's doing that, you're going to want Ja'Marr Chase in your fantasy team, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely.
So going back to the Bengals and hopes, what are your season hopes? How far do you? What's an acceptable season?
At a minimum, divisional round, probably the championship round, and hopefully Super Bowl. So I've got high aspirations, and I think rightly so. You know, we should aspire for the Super Bowl, but as a minimum, if we fall short of the divisional round, I'd say the season's been a disappointment, stroke failure.
Yeah, I would go one further than that. I think the championship. I think the AFC's a bit top heavy. There is 3 or 4 teams in there, but I think if you don't make, I fancy the Bengals to win the division. I've gone back and forth between the Bengals and Ravens all summer, but I just think if the Bengals keep everyone healthy, I just think they're a little bit more explosive. So I do fancy to win the division, which would give you an advantage going into the playoffs. But it's always difficult because it is a tough division to find 12 or 13 wins in. That seems unlikely. Whereas the Chiefs, possibly the Bills if they're still fixed, or there are other teams who can find those wins and then get the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
Which makes it a little bit harder.
Yeah. So what about you for the Colts then?
I think the floor is play. I think it's playoffs. So I wouldn't go. I'm not necessarily saying what level of the playoffs, but I think bearing in mind how close they came last year without Anthony Richardson for most of the season, I think the floor has got to be keep him fit, or the aim has got to be keep him fit and make the playoffs, and then it all comes. I think they can compete in the division. I think there's been a lot of love around the Texans. I don't think they're going to be they're going to blow everybody else away. I think the Jags will be better than everyone expects. I don't fancy the Titans. So I think we can compete for the division. I think we can compete for a playoff spot. And I think considering how close they went last year, I think we showed that they are very well coached and they've got a solid lineup. They should be making the playoffs. At that point, I think it gets very difficult in the AFC when you, like I say, if you don't win the division and you get a wild card and you've got to go to the Bengals or you've got to go to the Chiefs or somewhere like that, you're asking an awful lot, I think, for that roster to compete at that level. But I think it all comes down to for the Colts. Is if you can make the playoffs and Anthony Richardson looks like the player he looked like in the first few games of last year, you've got something to build on then. And I think every Colts fan would be happy. No one's expecting them to win the Super Bowl. It's just you're expecting to see some sort of progress or see that you've got your quarterback and then see that there is some sort of future coming. So
I feel like people are kind of sleeping a bit on the Colts because in that division you've got, the Jags, which, are heavily supported in the UK because of the London games. And you've got the Texans, who were fantastic last year. But people seem to forget that you nearly made the playoffs with your QB2. Yeah. You're one drive away from the playoffs.
Well, one drive away from what would effectively been winning the division. So it's like, that's what I mean, though. It was that close last year. I kind of think if they keep Richardson fit and healthy, they've kind of got to make the playoffs to me. Otherwise, you're going to look at it and go, well, we've not really moved on. They're not, if anything, they're going backwards. We've got just under a minute left of this quarter. How H isn't here, so let's just do his predictions for how we think the Texans are going to get on. I fully expected him after last year's prediction. I fully expected him to come on here and go, I think we could get to 7 wins. So
solid 7. Yeah.
So, if we get 9, that'll be impressive. I think the Texans are quite interesting. I think CJ Stroud is one of the interesting stories because everyone's just automatic. I think everyone's just already penned him in for this step up from what was a really impressive rookie season to being one of the top quarterbacks. And I think we've seen other rookie seasons in the past that have been good, and then that player hasn't then necessarily kicked on. So I do think it's really, I'm not saying he's not going to beat that player, but I think it's really interesting that he's just automatically seen. You see it in fantasy drafts and dynasty drafts all the time. Now he's taken as one of the top quarterbacks. I think it'd be interesting to see how he does. But I think if they don't get to 10 wins minimum, and make the playoffs, that's a disappointing season for them.
Oh yeah, I mean we should be looking further than just making the playoffs for the Texans, shouldn't we?
Yeah,
the Texans should be talking about the championship. They should be talking about, as a stretch goal, getting to that Super Bowl. They're probably in the same boat as the Bengals with me. Like anything less than divisional round is probably a failure right now, based on the bar that CJ Stroud set last year.
Yeah, and I think the moves they made. You bring in players like Mixon and Diggs. They're not at the start of their career. You're bringing them in because they're in theory in their prime or at the back end of their primes. Like you need them to make an impact now.
Yeah.
Right, quarter two, we are going to talk about our fantasy drafts. And I'm not going to bore anyone going through them player for player, but what we thought would be quite interesting was to talk about some of the players that we've ended up overdrafting, if that's a phrase, or drafting a lot of, those that we're excited about, those we're worried about, those that we just have a lot of shares on and are really keeping our fingers crossed. So this idea came about because I know we were in a few best balls together and a few other drafts. The Scott Fish springs to mind, and you seem to. There was a point in the summer where I feel like you had Brock Bowers and DeAndre Swift as were the two names that really jumped to mind as the players that you had on every single roster. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know how many rosters you've got in total now and how many appearances of Brock Bowers and DeAndre Swift there are, but I'm guessing still quite a few. It's quite a high percentage.
Yeah, at last count, I was up to mid 50s in terms of drafts, and then I put more money into my DraftKings account. And
okay, with best balls.
I've drafted over 50 different teams, including best balls. Fortunately, the majority of them are best balls, so I'm in for a busy season in terms of managing teams. What about you? How many are you up to?
This is wait. I think I'm in 19 redraft and dynasty leagues now, which is way more than I've ever managed before. So this season's going to be interesting. I've already told the family that the family will know from previous years that 6 o'clock on a Sunday from September to December, I disappear down here, got my TV in the background, and that's it. I'm gone. I've told them this year that it's going to have to be 5 o'clock because I'm going to need the hour just to go through and check I haven't made any mistakes. I just need an hour to myself just before the 6 o'clock kick off.
But, plus, I need a couple of hours on a Thursday for the Thursday night football. Then I need a couple of hours on Monday to make any last minute changes.
Well, that's it. Like Thursday's fine because you can sort of wake up at midnight or whatever, and you can buy yourself that hour. But or you've got the build up in the week to it. But on a Sunday when there's a lot going on, I was like, I'm going to need that extra hour just to go through and check things. But that doesn't even include all the best ball. Like we did loads of, I know both of us were in like loads of best ball drafts in DraftKings and various other charity best balls and stuff that we've been in, and the like the JTT Cup and stuff like that we've been in. So yeah, if you add all of those in, probably 50, 60, similar to you. Yeah.
It's been a busy
best balls though. Best balls. I figured I'm going to the States about halfway through the season. I think it's week 8. So I was like, I might use that time when I'm on holiday, got a bit of chill time to just go in and check my best balls at that point. I think I'll just leave them for 8 weeks, and then I'll go in like halfway through the season, see if I've made a complete mess, and I'll sit there going,
spend your full holiday looking at them.
Yeah, it is quite interesting when you draft across the summer and then you go back and look at some of the teams. You're like, why have you drafted him? Like the season hasn't even kicked off, and I'm already regretting certain decisions. But so other than Brock Bowers or Swift, or maybe Brock Bowers and Swift were the ones you were going to talk about, was there anyone else that's really taken over in terms of your teams?
Yeah, there is, and the reason I've selected this one is because it's someone that does kind of worry me. So I'm not worried about DeAndre Swift and Brock Bowers. DeAndre Swift is on a 3-year, $24 million contract. So on $8 million a year, he's getting the bulk of the work. No issues with that at all. Caleb Williams is a pocket passer. He won't be stealing goal line work off DeAndre Swift, so I'm happy with that. Brock Bowers, play as a tight end, play in the slot. They can play him out wide. I love all of that. I'm dead happy with picking Brock Bowers up. Still am. I'll defend that until week 8 when he's been rubbish. Because I don't like dropping people too early. But the one that I am over-invested in, I don't think over-invested is the right word, but someone I have a lot of is Gus Edwards.
Yeah. I can see that working, though.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, I can also see it not. I've been drafting him a lot based on.
Yeah.
It's Harbaugh in charge, run heavy offense, and he's being backed up again by J.K. Dobbins, who will probably be done 30 minutes into the first game.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have no issue with the Gus Edwards. I think at the price, I think there's a lot. It's one of those things where it shouldn't really work because he hasn't worked. I mean, I know he scored something like 13 touchdowns last year, but as someone who had him in the team, it's like you needed him to score 2 touchdowns because he was running for about 6 yards a week. Even with his 2 touchdowns, he'd still only end up with 6 yards. He wasn't putting up loads, so I just can't see him being the sort of back where they just give him the ball 20 to 25 times a game. But for where you get him in drafts and the possibility that or the opportunity that might happen, I think it's worth the price, and I think he's a good pick, and he's someone that I have been keeping an eye on. And I got to a point where I felt like I was picking him a bit too much, so then I started picking other people. And what I have started doing recently is taking a bit of a gamble on J.K. Dobbins because he drops so low in drafts that I was like, probably not redraft, more of the best balls and stuff like that. But I just kind of go, if it works for J.K. Dobbins and he does stay fit, that he could be in that offense, he could be good. But I think you're right with Gus Edwards feels like a safe pick to me.
Yeah, he's going as the 37th running back, which puts him between Ty J. Spears, Brian Robinson, and Trey Benson, who are above him. And then below him, you've got Zeke Elliott, Chase Brown, and Blake Corum. So he's in amongst the running backs that are going to be sharing the backfield. Some rookies are in there. Or maybe, those players are going to do both. They are both a rookie and are going to be sharing snaps. So for what you're paying for him, it could be a bit of a bargain. And I'm happy to take the chance and bank on a J.K. Dobbins injury, because if history's shown us anything, it's likely to work.
Yeah, I agree. I also heard some stat that they had. It was something positive about their running game in preseason. Anyway, they were number 1 for missed tackles or something to do with the offensive line. So I can't remember the stat, so I shouldn't have brought it up. But it was positive. It was positive for the Chargers' run game anyway. Gus Edwards is going to benefit from it. I meant to mention this in quarter 1, and we didn't have a chance to talk about Hard Knocks. And I'm guessing that you haven't watched Hard Knocks because you're just not a Caleb Williams fan. So you've still not watched that, right? So I am now up to date. So I've watched the first 4 episodes. The last one airs in the UK on Thursday. So it's going to be difficult for you to watch because I know you don't like Caleb Williams. And my thought on Caleb Williams after watching it is the guy has clearly got a lot of talent and he's very, very confident in his own ability. It's either going to go really well or he's going to bomb out. Like, there is, to me, watching it, and I'd love to get somebody else's opinion. Happy to hear, people who are listening, send us your thoughts on social or whatever. But it doesn't feel like there's any middle ground. It feels like if he's not one of the best quarterbacks in the league, he won't be able to mentally process it properly, and he'll just flame out. But there is a very good chance that he ends up being a top 5 quarterback for the next 10 years and beyond. The reason I want you to watch it is his backup is obviously Tyson Bagent, who's basically through this whole thing, you sort of see that he's nailed on. His dad, rivals Amon-Ra's dad as the biggest prick on reality TV. Honestly, he is. It's the same thing. He's an arm wrestler, so he's like a world champion arm wrestler. And honestly, mate, I reckon I know you said the same that you said this about Amon-Ra's dad. You've got to watch at least even if you just watch episodes 3 and 4 where Caleb's not in it as much, and it's a bit more about some of the second string players. his dad, what a tool he is. Honestly, it's like all about him. It's embarrassing. Like, you're sort of watching it going, what a muppet. Like, he makes Amon-Ra's dad look like a quiet little soul in the corner. Like, it's unbelievable. Anyway, that was my hard rocks. Hard knocks, not hard rocks. Right, a few of mine. So I made a note of a few players that I think I've drafted a lot of. I've already mentioned one of them, I think, a couple of episodes ago. Jalen Waddle is all over my teams. I don't know. Dynasty, redraft, best ball. He's in everything, especially dynasty teams. And
which I don't have a problem with that. Dynasty no, all day.
Right at this point, I'm like, I think it's just one of those things where I was out on him at the end of last season because he burnt me too much. And then I've built up my hopes. And the closer we get to the season, the more worried I'm getting about how invested I am in Jalen Waddle again. But I think all the talent's there and there's no reason why he couldn't be. And at the price he's going, he's proven he can finish as a top 10 wide receiver a couple of years ago. So even with Tyreek Hill there. So, in a couple of dynasty teams, I've got Tua. And I was like, it just fits really well. So it should work, but I am getting a little bit worried about it. The other ones I've got a lot of. Chris Olave, I feel like I've ended up with in every single league I've drafted. I've got a lot riding on Chris Olave.
Yeah.
Karen Williams, who I'm not in the slightest bit worried about. I think Karen Williams could win me a lot of leagues. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I seem to have pushed him up above even Chase and Jefferson at various times and taken a lot of Amon-Ra.
Okay.
And especially in full PPR, because I think he is going to be a target monster, and we'll get to him in a minute because I've mentioned him in my bold predictions. And then I'm fully back on the Kyler Murray hype train that I was riding a few years ago.
That was never in doubt.
I've got Kyler in more leagues than I haven't got Kyler at this point, so he really needs to have the season that I think he's going to have. But I mean, out of them, I'm not really worried about any of them. I'm just, I've just got a lot riding on.
So did you hear the part about like last week when me and H were discussing Karen?
No.
Are you aware of the news that Sean McVay is making Karen do punt returns?
Yes, I am. But
and that doesn't worry you.
When you read the whole quote, I was like, no, it doesn't worry me. But because it was kind of like the way I read that was, we're going to let him do punt returns because he's basically one of our most dynamic players. So why wouldn't we? And it was like, we've got Blake Corum and we've got somebody else whose name escapes me to sort of spell Kyren if he needs a rest on the offense. And my biggest concern when they drafted Blake Corum was that it was going to be a shared backfield, and it doesn't feel like that. It feels like he's going to go with Kyren Williams until Kyren gets a bit tired, and then he's going to bring Blake Corum in. So I'm not worried about it. I do think he needs that element to keep him fresh. The worrying thing with Kyren Williams is he's going to get injured, but most running backs get injured at some point anyway.
I think the counter argument for that would be, if you've got someone who is as dynamic as Kyren Williams, why make him do punt returns when you can keep him fresh to be your RB1, and you can make Blake Corum do punt returns?
Yeah,
I was thinking today, like, why does Sean McVay hate running backs so much? And I said it last week, last year, he just completely throws Cam Akers out.
Well, Cam Akers wasn't very good.
Backs. Well, there is that. He just hates running backs.
I also think I would take what he says now with a pinch of salt. Like, if we get into the season, it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see. I'm not worried at this point, but I do see why you might be worried. I think on the Rams, one player I am worried about, who I own a bit of, especially in Dynasty, and I don't really know why I'm worried about him, but Puka Nacua, the closer we get to the season, is starting to worry me a little bit. I can just see he had such a big rookie season. Everyone's expecting him to push on. I could just see it being Cooper Kupp being the number one and Puka just being the sort of second rate. still putting up decent numbers, but not where he's going in redraft as like a top 7 or 8 wide receiver. I can see that being a bit of a disappointment by the end of the year.
Yeah, me and H both agree because we covered this last week. So Puka's too high and Kupp's too low.
Yeah,
they should probably both be around 15. But I'd be taking Cooper Kupp higher than Puka Nacua. Yeah. But this year, I mean, if you got Puka in Dynasty, happy days. You don't need to worry about that because Cooper Kupp's he's not young anymore. But I think he will get one more year as wide receiver 1 at the Rams. And Nacua, you will get that regression, but that's a regression back to where he should be. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't mean he's playing well. He's not second rate. He's just wide receiver 2.
Yeah.
For now.
That's it. I think he's just going a little bit high.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. 100%. He's going too high. Yeah.
Yeah. So, quarter 3, we are going to do some bold predictions. But before we do our bold predictions, we're going to talk Game Day app. So our friends at Game Day, who we did a little bit of work with last year, are back for another year. I'm hoping Ian's got the promo code because I've forgotten to write it down. So,
yes. So fantasy Game Day. Fantasy Game Day app for any new listeners, by the way, is an app where you can play daily fantasy sports. So every week you get a budget of £40,000 or dollars. I can't remember which one it's in. And you have to build a lineup from that, pay an entrance fee, and you go up against everyone else that wants to join in. So it's basically, if you do fantasy Premier League, kind of like that, but on a weekly basis, and you win cash money. So if you do want to sign up and you use the promo code JMDS, and that's S for sugar, fantasygameday.app will match your first week's bet. So if you sign up and play week 1, you will get your second week for free, courtesy of Game Day app and the Jefferson My Drinks podcast.
Was that JMDFS? Because your mic cut out a little bit.
Yes, it's JMDFS.
Right, cool.
And if you do sign up and you do send a team, send it over to us.
Yeah, we want to see how people are getting on. We had a few winners. Millionaire Matt, as he's now known on this podcast, was a regular winner last year.
Regular winner,
all three of us won some money at various points. I think you second. Did you get a second?
Yeah, I got a second once. Yeah, I was happy with that.
So out of 100 odd people, that's some decent result, decent money to be winning. So what we are going to continue with talking about Game Day app through the season, and what we thought we'd do every week is just focus on a captain that we are picking ahead of that week. Obviously, we're not going to take you through the whole roster, although I have started building our roster for this week. Not finished it yet, but I've got a few obvious. Do you want to talk us through captain and who, Ian, you've made a decision on? And we've already talked about him a little bit, but do you want to talk about who the captain is for this week for the JMD team?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who haven't played before or are going to be new to it this year, so the reason the captain is so important is because your captain gets double points. So if you get this pick right, it sets you up for a really big week and a real good chance of winning some money. So it is a big decision. And I've got 2 for you to choose from this week. And we'll talk about one that Pete's already in love with and he's got all over the place, and it's Chris Olave.
Yeah.
Starting the season off with a home divisional game against a favourable Carolina defense. Last year, he averaged 14.4 points with a 23.3 high, and that was playing with an injured Derek Carr. If Derek Carr starts in the season healthy with a clean slate, then I'd expect these numbers to be a lot higher. And he could start week 1 with a season record for him in terms of points. But for a steady floor, Chris Olave, he will get you at least roughly 14 points, which you can double for 28. That's steady.
And how much is Chris Olave?
5,800.
That seems reasonably priced.
Yeah, it's cheap. Okay. I mean, it's a lot cheaper because obviously you got your Bijans, you got your CD Lambs, you got your Ja'Marr Chases that are obviously priced higher. But I stay away from those for this week. H likes to make the point that don't trust any player that has sat out of preseason, such as your CD Lambs, your Chases, your Brandon Ayuk's, because they're not up to speed with the offense, they've not got the chemistry with the quarterback. For week 1 in Fantasy Game Day, I'm going the same way. And my second choice is Amari Cooper. So in 5 games last year with Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper averaged 17.6 points. And he's going for the same price as Chris Olave at 5,800 points. And this is in a game where the Browns might be having to try and keep up with the Cowboys. If they're trying to keep up with the Cowboys, chances are CD's gone off anyway. And he could have been your captain. But you will have spent a lot more money on that. But Amari Cooper over Chris Olave, Cooper's got the potential for those big weeks. And it's a shame. I'm pretty sure this is why H isn't here. Last year, he had his big week against the Texans in week 16, where he put up 51 points. Whereas Chris Olave, he's not done anything like that yet. So for the same price, you can get someone like Amari Cooper that has a 17.6 average with Deshaun Watson over 5 games, but also has the potential to score 50 points. So I would lean towards Amari Cooper as my game day captain this week.
I'd forgotten about Amari Cooper's 51 points in week 15 last year. It just there's a big thing with fantasy. It's like we talk about it a lot. There's so much media and content around it, and we probably talked about it at the end of last year. But it does just make you realize that you can put so much time and effort and research and everything else, but there is a good chance that when it gets to the playoffs, your opponent's going to have one bloke who has trundled along doing absolutely nothing all year, and is just going to put up a score that you're not going to be able to compete with. And it's just one of those things. There's nothing you can do about it. You could go 14-0 in the regular season, and then in week 15, 16, you could come up against a Mike Evans or an Amari Cooper who just goes absolutely ballistic and drops a 50 burger, and that's it. But that was your season over with.
And that's you straight out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Top the league.
It's a strange game. Yeah. It's a strange game.
First round by 4th place.
Yeah. That
is the beauty of fantasy football.
Yeah. Effectively, the season is just about making the playoffs. It doesn't matter what your record is. I like having a good record. I like looking back over the years and going, I've won. But we talk about it all the time. We talk about it all the time. I've got a pretty good record in the regular season in our draft that we are drafting tomorrow night, in our league that we're drafting tomorrow night. But in 8 years, I've never won the Super Bowl, so it just doesn't matter, does it? At the end of the day,
no.
So you can go, well,
there it is.
I've won 60% of my regular season games. It's like, well, it doesn't matter because you haven't made the playoffs. Oh, you haven't won the Super Bowl, so your name's not
on a trophy, so it doesn't count.
No.
It doesn't count.
No,
that's my recommendations for Fantasy Game Day captain this week. Again, if you do join us, the fantasygameday.app, and the promo code for a free week is JMDFS. And send it to your team once you send one in so we can have a look at it.
Okay. Just so you're aware, we're going to go with Chris Olave.
Okay. All right.
We're going to go with Chris because I think the Browns-Cowboys game could be a lower scorer than everyone expects, just because it's at the Browns. If it was at the Cowboys, I'd sort of buy into that being a high-scoring game, but I could see it just being one of them games where it's like 17-14, because that's what the Browns like to do. And 2, because I don't trust Deshaun Watson as far as I can throw him, which is about as far as the massage parlor around the corner from here. So I just don't trust him. So I will put, once I've done our team, I will put it on social. But so far, it's Chris Olave, who we are teaming up with Derek Carr and going all in on the same stack.
Right,
and then
okay. Fair enough.
We've got T. Higgins as well, because I think T. Higgins could have a big game against the Pats with all the question marks around Ja'Marr Chase. That's the start of our team. But I will look out for it on social. We'll post it later in the week. So for the rest of the quarter, we we've not got as much time as I thought we would have, but bold predictions, we don't have to spend a lot of time on these. We'll just sort of, you said you've got one per division, so do you want to pick us off?
I've got a bold prediction per division.
Go on.
When I say bold, I don't necessarily believe that they're actually going to happen. But in the AFC East, Jets to finish above the Bills.
Okay, I can see that.
AFC North, Russell Wilson to be QB1 all year.
Yeah, that's not happening.
You don't think?
No, AFC I think they'll South, go back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
AFC South, Colts to make the playoffs under Joe Flacco.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. AFC West, Chiefs to not make the championship game.
I don't like it, but okay.
NFC East, Jayden Daniels more rushing yards than Jalen Hurts.
Ooh, now that's the sort of thing I like. I could see that happening as well.
Yeah.
I think Jalen Hurts. I think his rushing touchdowns will still be up. I think his rushing yards might be down. He's got so many weapons. It's like, especially now he's got Johan Dotson. He just doesn't need to rush as much. Whereas I think Jayden Daniels is going to look up a little bit more and go, right, Terry's triple covered. Well, where do I go from here? I'm going to have to run. So,
for my fantasy teams, I hope that he just checks it down to Eckler because I'm still in on Eckler. I'd love to try and get some odds on that one, actually.
Old man running back. It should be the name of the whole of your teams. I love an old man running back.
NFC North, Bears to not make the playoffs. The Lions and Packers both do.
I don't know how bold that is, but
okay.
You get the half decent odds, I suppose.
NFC South, Panthers to finish higher than the Saints.
Is that right? Is that the last one?
No, I've got the NFC West. Marvin Harrison Jr. to beat Puka's rookie receiving record.
He was one of the players I was going to talk about in Q2 because in terms of players I'm excited about, I haven't got a lot of Marvin Harrison because he's going too high for me in redraft. But I did pick him up in a couple of dynasty leagues, and he's one of the exciting stories of the season. And then it's obvious he's drafted higher than almost any other wide receiver's ever been taken and all that sort of stuff. But I do think the way he looks in preseason and training camp, not so much preseason but training camp, and all the talk around him is just that he is going to be elite from day one. And his rookie season I think is going to be really interesting to watch just to see how it pans out. But I could see that happening. It's a big total to beat though. Rookie yards. He got
1,400 and something.
Yeah, that's a big total. That's a big total. Right, going back to the Saints then. I've already put this on social, but one of mine is Saints to win the NFC South, which as 4-1.
I saw that, and my comment was that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's one of my bold predictions. I am going it's a bit obvious in terms of make a prediction about who's going to win the whole thing. I am going Lions to win the Super Bowl. I think they could go all the way. And a sort of caveat to that, or not a caveat, and a part of that is going to be that Amon-Ra St. Brown wins Offensive Player of the Year. I think that's my other bold prediction. And
is that because you're too invested in fantasy? You just wishing that into reality.
I just think there's a good. I think there's a good. The Lions have sort of stepped up year on year, and I really think there's an opportunity for them now. Everyone's talking about the Packers being better than expected last year, and Bears going to be better than they have been for years. But I think the Lions are just running it back with the same team, and I think they're very well run. I think they're very well motivated, and I think it's easy to forget how close they came to going to the Super Bowl last year. And I really think that they could be in something about the 49ers that makes you think it won't be the same machine this year, and the same with the Eagles. So I think there's a good chance that they maybe get the number 1 seed and then the whole thing goes through Detroit. And if it goes through Detroit, I can see them going to the Super Bowl and winning the whole thing. And at 12-1, I think it's worth a few quid. My going back, you've obviously had a punt on Marvin Harrison. I can't argue with Marvin Harrison. My rookie wide receiver bold prediction is that Brian Thomas is top 2 in fantasy points by the end of the season. And he's currently going off the board as the 7th wide receiver in terms of rookies. So I think top 2 is bold enough prediction. I can't see him beating Marvin Harrison, but I do think there's a good chance he finishes above everybody else when all is said and done at the end of the year.
Right, so you were talking rookies only then, weren't you? Because you said top 2. But I was like, there's no way, no. Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm not suggesting he's going to be a top 2 wide receiver. Not quite.
That's mental. Oh yeah, I can get on board with that one.
I think the thing is with Brian Thomas is I remember watching a bit of tape. I don't watch a lot of college football. I'm not H. Like I'm not going to claim I do, but I remember being quite excited about him potentially being the Colts pick, and I remember being excited, pre-draft. And he went. I think it seems to have been forgotten that he was the obvious 4th choice behind Neighbors and Odunze, and obviously Marvin Harrison, and ahead of everyone else. And I think since the draft, because he went to the Jags and then Worthy went to the Chiefs, and then the Bills have drafted Coleman, and it's like because it's just these fancier teams that have picked someone. The quality of the receiver seems to have been forgotten a little bit. And I think there's enough going on there that the Jags could be a little bit better than expected. And if they are, I think he could have a really good season.
You are banking on Trevor Lawrence being a lot better than his performances last year.
He needs to be.
Yeah.
Right, Q4. We really do need to start looking forward to this weekend. So, for the first time this year, selection nightmare time.
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
I can do. So, mine's 2 wide receivers, one of whom is actually a rookie. Full PPR in a very deep roster. So I think it's a 3 wide receiver, 2 flex league. So I need to play several wide receivers. And my options are Malik Neighbors in his rookie debut against the Minnesota Vikings at MetLife, or Rashee Rice at home to the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh my word.
That's the reaction you should have.
Yeah, oh my God. See, my instant reaction is Rashee Rice.
Yeah.
It's against the Ravens. I'm going to say it's probably going to be a high-scoring game. It's 2 good defenses, 2 very good offenses. Could go either way. So I'm actually sitting on the fence now. I said it's going to be a high-scoring game. And I'm like, actually, will it? No, I think they'll both go out and they'll both score quite heavily, I think. So Rashee Rice could be heavily involved. But then the darker side of me is like, oh, well, any receiver not named Kelsey's a waste of time at the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Or pick Neighbors.
So Rice is, I've got Rice in a few dynasty leagues. I've picked him up in a few redraft. The closer we got to the start of the season, it looked like he wasn't going to get suspended because it just feels like he's going too low for me. And then all of the talk out of camp is he's the number 1 target in training camp and all of the training games and preseason and all that sort of stuff. He seems to be the number 1 target again. And it's like, it just feels like, he could quite easily get suspended at some point. He's probably not going to get suspended between now and Thursday night, but he's going to get suspended at some point this season or in the future. But I'm with you. Like it was that sort of like, it feels like he could score. He could go 8 for 80 yards and a touchdown and kick my week off brilliantly on Thursday night. Whereas Malik Neighbors, I just don't know if the Giants are going to score a touchdown to get anywhere near there. He might have 15 receptions, but he might not score a touchdown.
Well, another issue is what's your stance on playing players that play on Thursday nights? No, never back in early game.
Well, yeah. I don't.
Yeah, he could kick your week off to a belter. But
Yeah.
conversely, you could be going into Friday, Sunday, Monday going, oh, what have I done?
See, I have tried in years past. I think I favoured the players who were playing in prime time because I would sit down and watch that game specifically. So I was like, well, I'd rather have that player than someone who's playing at 6 o'clock on a Sunday and he's going to get lost in all of that. And I tried not to do that as much last year because I was like, that's a terrible reason to decide on one player over another. But the Thursday night, I think, is interesting because like you'd always rather have someone who's playing in Monday Night Football and you go into it going, right, if he gets me 15 points, I've won. I think you'd always rather have that. But there's that chance that if he goes out and has a really good game, it kicks you off brilliantly, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I would go with Rashie Rice, and it's because I've just remembered that Hollywood Brown isn't playing this week.
No, he's not, which is another good point to remember.
So he's already confirmed as out. Is it a shoulder injury? He's done his shoulder, and he's already been confirmed as out this week. So it's literally Travis Kelce, Rashie Rice, Xavier Worthy.
Yeah.
I take Rashie Rice until I've seen what Daniel Jones is going to look like when he comes back this year. See the connection with Neighbours. I'd want to see it, and we've already seen it from Rashie Rice last year. So yeah, Rashie Rice is my guy for you.
Right, I'll go with Rashie Rice. I've got him in enough teams that I can play him in some and not play him in others. So the joy of having like multiple teams. I don't live and die by that Thursday night.
I'd rather be right everywhere or wrong everywhere than keep him in some leagues and drop him in others. I'd rather just get it right or wrong. I don't like grey areas.
The thing is, I think because we, I mean, obviously we play in 8-team leagues, and I know we've got a few 10-team leagues, and then the odd 1 or 2 12-team leagues as well. There's the thing with Rashie Rice is he's one of those players where this is a perfect example of a league I will probably end up playing him in. Whereas some of our 8-team leagues, like I've got him in our Dynasty League, but I'm probably only going to play 2 wide receivers, and I've got AJ Brown, and I've got Puka, and I've got Waddle, and so it's like he probably doesn't get into the conversation because of other people on that roster. So it's not like I'm leaving him on the bench because I just don't want to get burnt everywhere. I'm leaving him on the bench because I think I've got better options. But
okay,
I think that's it. Play him in half your leagues. You're right. You're going to be half upset one way or another, or half happy one way or another, I suppose. What's yours, mate?
Well, based on what we've already discussed during this last 53 minutes, I already know the answer you're going to give me, to be honest. Because mine
is it Chris Olave?
No, it's not. It's the other one. It's Karen. It's Karen versus DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, that's an easy Karen Williams.
Because I'm in if he's returning punts, I don't want him as my RB1 camp. Whereas you're not affected by that kind of line of thinking.
No, I also think out of all, again, we're going to get on to talk about the primetime games. Out of all the games this weekend, I think Lions-Rams could be one of the highest scoring. So I've got Kyren and Puka in the same team in one league, and I'm sort of currently debating between one or the other. And it just occurred to me earlier that actually the thing to do might be to just play both of them, because I think they could. I think that could easily be a 30-point each way game. So I just think that Kyren Williams, it's easy to forget how good he was when he played last year, and he was significant. Other than Christian McCaffrey, he was significantly better than everybody else when he played in terms of running backs, including Breece Hall, Bijan, everybody else. And I just don't think DeAndre Swift's at that level.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. We have different views on the return. So the Bears are playing Tennessee.
At
home. Yeah. And so this is in our JMD JTT Charity Bowl as well.
I think
I want to make a big statement week 1.
We've got it.
This is our cup. Get wrecked.
Yeah. This is our league. We need to run it.
Yeah.
I think.
Can I just very quickly run you through my running back room for this league, though? Because I managed to get Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, Kyren Williams, and then obviously Gus Edwards, and then even more obviously Austin Ekeler.
Oh, nice. Who's never going to play in that league unless you get about 4 injuries.
And I've got Nick Chubb. Like, that is an unbelievable running room once Nick Chubb comes back.
You're gonna have so many opportunities to bring in new players when Nick Chubb finally retires because his knee's stopped.
So I feel like when we do selection nightmares every week, could just be picking running backs from this team.
Yeah, possibly. I think going back to that decision,
that's strong.
The one thing I would say is DeAndre Swift's probably got a bit more. Like DeAndre, I could probably guess that DeAndre Swift's total is going to be about 12 points. He'll have.
I think it's 11 something.
Yeah, he'll have. Yeah, and it feels like it'll finish about that. Whereas I think Kyren Williams, it could be one of those. It is a bit more of a gamble, but he could put up 30 points.
Fair enough. Well, I've already swapped him over. Kyren is in.
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on the rest of your roster. But if what do you want on? Especially because when the game is, the game's what, Sunday night. By the time you get to Sunday night, you're gonna want someone. You're gonna want to look at him and go, yeah, he could get me 25, 30 points. And I don't think you're not gonna get excited about DeAndre Swift. No chance.
Okay.
In that same league, I think me, you, and H. So we're all in different divisions. Me, you, and H all did the same thing and went really heavy on running backs because I was looking at mine. I've got Kyren. He's not going to make the team because I've got Bijan, Gibbs, and Jonathan Taylor, I think. So I'm like ahead of him. So I'm like, well, I don't think Kyren gets in here. So I'm not bringing him in ahead of Jonathan Taylor. He's my boy. So, right. We're going to finish the pod this week doing this. Well, this is our new thing for 2024. So for those of you listening in 2023, we finished the pod by going through every single game and predicting what we thought was going to happen. We are not going to do that this year. One, because it's a bit dull. Two, because we realized that for certain games, we're just all predicting the same thing. Because, perfect example, if the Bengals are playing the Patriots as they are this week, no one's tipping the Patriots to win that. So what we thought we would do instead is we're just going to look at the primetime games. Obviously, there's 4 of them this week. And whatever the consensus is, which is going to be difficult because there's only 2 of us, so we might have to get H's take if we don't agree. Whatever the consensus is, I'm going to put a little bet on each week, and any money we make at the end of the season, we will pick a charity and donate at the end of the season.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
We're not picking the charity yet because there's a good chance we don't make any money, and all that happens is I'm out of pocket.
We'll see. You build a charity. They owe you money.
Yeah. We'll pick a charity and then send them a bill, send them an invoice at the end of it. Right, so we've got 4 minutes, roughly 1 minute on each of these games. Chiefs, Ravens, how are you feeling?
I'm going Ravens.
Now, so this is the first problem we've got because I don't think the Chiefs will lose. They lost last year. I don't think they'll make the same mistake. I've gone Chiefs to win it in quite a high-scoring game, 31-27.
Okay.
So
I didn't do a score prediction, so I've obviously missed a brief on that.
No, you didn't.
Think it'll be a high-scoring game. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I do think it'll be a high-scoring game. I think the addition of Derrick Henry is huge for the Ravens, and the return of Mark Andrews. So Mark Andrews, who was tight end 1, 2, 3 years ago.
Yeah,
he's still elite. He missed most of last year, with a bad ankle injury. Thanks, Logan Wilson. Lovely hip drop tackle that wasn't a hip drop tackle. They actually use it as an example of what isn't a hip drop tackle, believe it or not. So all them ratbirds that were moaning about it, they won.
You're not salty though, are you?
No. But I think the return of Mark Andrews, the acquisition of Derrick Henry, turns the Ravens into a much better team than what they were last year. And they were still very good last year. And I think it's going to be too much for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I just think with Rashee Rice available, I think I think the Ravens defense has had quite a lot of change, and I just wonder whether it's going to take a few weeks for them to properly settle in. I think going into Arrowhead, back-to-back champions, they lost to the Lions last year, and I think they got caught cold a little bit. And I think they'll have spent the last 3 weeks planning and making sure that doesn't happen again. And I just think they'll be a little bit too strong at home. But we'll speak to H and we'll get a split
a decider
on that. We'll get him to decide that for us. What about so first the Brazil game Friday night, Packers Eagles. Yes, I agree. I think there's been a lot said about I don't know about you, but I think there's been a lot said about the Packers, and everyone's just kind of expecting them to carry on as they sort of kicked off or as they finished last year. And I think it'll take them a bit of time to get going. Whereas I think the Eagles are a little bit more of I know they finished badly last year, but I think they're a bit more of a polished machine. I'd take Hurts over Love. I'd take the wide receivers over the Packers wide receivers. I just think they're a bit more of a heavy hitting team, and I think they'll find it a bit easier to get the win on week 1.
Yes, I was having a conversation with someone over this game the other day, and I can't for the life of me remember who it was. But saying they were predicting the Packers to win this game based on how strong they were at the back end of the season. I was like, oh, right, so do you think the Eagles are going to be as bad as they were at the end of last season? I was like, no, they'll be well better. I was like, well, you can't use one line of logic for one team. Oh, because they were great at the end of last year, they'll be great this year. But, they were terrible at the end of last year, so they're going to be great this year. Pick a lane.
Yeah, I agree. Lions hosting the Rams on Sunday night. Probably the game I'm looking forward to the most.
Yeah, it's got to be the Lions.
Do you know? Yeah, I went back and forth on this, and then because I picked the Lions to win the Super Bowl, I decided that they needed to win week 1. But if you told me that the Rams were going to just because, and the only reason, it's just one of those typical things where because this is like a repeat of the wild card game? It's a repeat of the wild card game from January. And I can just see the Rams going in there and getting a little bit of revenge for that defeat. So but then I did weigh it all up, and I still think the Lions, especially if Gibbs is fit and available to play, because I know there's been question marks over his fitness, but I think if he's available, I still think the Lions have got too much for him.
Yeah, and there's always that added edge of Stafford v. Goff as well.
Yeah, which is always good fun.
Yeah.
And do you see the Jets rolling into San Francisco in week 1 and upsetting them? No,
absolutely not. No.
I
can't imagine you do either.
No, I think the Jets. I mean, obviously you mentioned in your bold predictions the Jets to finish above the Bills. I think the Jets can have a good season, but I think it's easy to forget that Rodgers hasn't only been out for a year. He's been it feels like a long time since Aaron Rodgers has played football, and going in against the 49ers defense on week 1 back on Monday Night Football, I just can't. I think it'll take the Jets a few weeks to get going, whereas the 49ers are just rolling the same thing back again. And I don't I don't think the 49ers are going to be as good as they were last year, but I think they'll be good enough to beat the Jets. So we agree.
Yeah,
we agree on Eagles, Lions, and 49ers.
Best possible case for the Jets in that game is that Aaron Rodgers doesn't leave on crutches.
Yeah. If
you're a Jets fan, that's a win for you in week 1.
Yeah. And I know we have a couple of people listening who are Jets fans, and I think they would probably agree that if you get through that game and are just reasonably competitive, you don't actually have to win it for it to be a positive because of the game it is. It's one of the tougher games you're going to play all year. If you come out of that with a 21-17 defeat, actually, I would take a lot of positive. Like you say, if Rodgers is still fit, everyone's still, Breece Hall's running like you expect him to. Garrett Wilson looks like the connection's there with Rodgers. I don't see that being a massive negative going into the games that they've got after that. They've got, if you look at the Jets schedule after the 49ers, they've got what should be a cakewalk for the next 4 or 5 weeks. It's like they're the games that you've got to win. The focus on Monday night is just making sure you look like you're capable of going in and winning those other games and getting to week 6 at 4-2 and then pushing on from there. That was the week 1 preview show of the JMD Fantasy Podcast. if this is the first time you listened, thanks for tuning in or watched on YouTube. If you've never watched us on YouTube, you should go to YouTube and watch over again. It's the same content. You just get to see us. So maybe choose that for next week. Like, subscribe, and share on all of the social media. We are at JMD Pod on all of the socials and at JMD Podcast on TikTok. Like I say, like us and subscribe on YouTube. We will be posting, we will have at least one show a week, and we are going to aim to get them out first thing Wednesday morning ahead of the following week. So, and you'll see stuff on our socials and bits to get involved in as well. So, as always, thanks for listening, and we'll hopefully see you again next week.